Poor dog catcher and the dog.
A man saw a dog walking by and threw some bits of food to him. The dog then said to the man, "O man, keep away from me. Your sudden kindness makes me even more wary." This fable shows that people who offer many gifts unexpectedly are likely trying to deceive. The thief and the dog. A nighttime thief once threw bread to a dog. The dog replied, "You want to silence my tongue so I won't bark for my master's sake. You're trying to profit from my wrongdoing." Sudden generosity may seem pleasing to fools, but the wise see through it. 404. The Hunter and the Wolf. A hunter saw a wolf attacking a flock and scattering as many of the sheep as he could. The hunter skillfully hunted the wolf down and set his dogs on him. Then he shouted at the wolf, "O terrible beast, where is that former strength of yours? You cannot even withstand the attack of these dogs." This fable shows that each person earns their reputation in the field they specialize in. 405. The Cyclops and his treasure. There was once a man who was careful with his wealth and somewhat proud of his success. He lived comfortably with his children, but eventually he lost all his money. In his despair, he began to blaspheme and even thought about killing himself, feeling that death was better than living in misery. So, he took his sword and went off to a remote place, choosing to die rather than endure such hardship. While on his way, he came across a deep pit, and inside the pit he found gold, quite a large amount of it. The gold had been left by a giant known as the Cyclops. When the man saw the gold, he was filled with both fear and joy. He threw down his sword, took the gold, and joyfully returned home to his children. Later, the Cyclops came back to the pit. When he found that the gold was gone and only a sword remained, he picked up the sword and in his fury killed himself. This story shows how bad things happen to bad people, while good things come to those who are honest and virtuous. 406. The Dogs and the Lion's Skin. Some dogs found a lion's skin and were tearing it to shreds. A fox, seeing this, said, "If that lion were still alive, you would see that his claws are stronger than your teeth." This fable is about people who attack someone once they have fallen from their position of power and glory. 407. Wolf and Dog in Pursuit. As the dog chased the wolf, he barked in joy at his speed and strength. He thought the wolf was fleeing from him because of his superior abilities. But the wolf turned and said to the dog, "I am not afraid of you. I am afraid of your master chasing me." This shows that you should not take pride in qualities that belong to someone else. 408. The Fox and the Hare in the Well. A thirsty hare went down into a well to drink water. He drank a great deal with pleasure. When he was about to climb out, he found himself in a predicament, unable to ascend. He became greatly discouraged. A fox came by and, upon finding the hare there, said to him, "You have indeed made a grave mistake. You should have first considered how to get out of the well before going down into it." This fable criticizes those who act on impulse without seeking advice. A fox saw a lion imprisoned in a cage. Standing near him, she insulted him viciously. The lion said to her, "It is not you who insults me, but the misfortune that has befallen me." This fable shows that when prominent figures fall into misfortune, they are often scorned by those of little worth. 10. The Man and the Old Woman. A young man was walking on an intensely hot day when he came across an old woman traveling the same road. Seeing her struggling from the heat and exhaustion of the journey, he took pity on her. When she could no longer continue, he lifted her off the ground and carried her on his back. As he carried her, he was consumed by shameful thoughts, and his lustful desires surged. He immediately set the old woman down and had intercourse with her. The woman, bewildered, asked, "What are you doing to me?" He replied, "You are too heavy for me, so I've decided to make some of your flesh wear away." Afterward, he picked her up again and placed her back on his shoulders. As they continued down the road, the old woman said, "If I'm still too heavy for you, feel free to put me down again and make some of my flesh wear away." This fable illustrates how some people, when pursuing their desires, act as if they were unaware of their true intentions, claiming their actions were driven by necessity rather than pure lust. 411. The Donkey, the Onager, and the Lion. An onager saw a donkey carrying a heavy load. He mocked the donkey's servitude, saying, "How fortunate I am! I live freely without toil, grazing at will in the hills. You, however, depend on others for food and endure constant slavery and beatings." Just then, a lion appeared. It did not approach the donkey, as the driver was nearby, but the onager, being alone, was fiercely attacked and devoured by the lion. This fable shows that those who are obstinate and stiff-necked, carried away by their own will and refusing help from others, quickly fall prey. Fall 12. The Rivers and the Sea. The rivers gathered together to complain about the sea. They said to her, "Why is it that when we bring you waters that are sweet and drinkable, you turn them into salty and undrinkable waters?" The sea, seeing that she was being blamed, replied, "Don't come to me, you won't become salty." This story shows how people sometimes criticize others unfairly, even when those others are actually helping them. 413. The Olive Tree and the Fig Tree. When a fig tree lost all her leaves during the winter, a nearby olive tree made fun of her bare branches. The olive tree said, "In both winter and summer, I am always adorned with leaves, staying green with new life, while your beauty only lasts during the summer." While the olive tree was boasting, a thunderbolt suddenly fell from the sky and burned her to ashes. The fig tree, however, stood there, safe and unharmed. This fable illustrates that those who boast about their wealth or good fortune can be struck by unexpected misfortune. The Lioness and the Wild Boar. A bull found a lion lying asleep and gored him with his horns until the lion was dead. The lion's mother arrived and wept bitterly over her son. When the wild boar saw her lamenting from a distance, he said, "Oh, how many people are mourning right now because their children have been killed by you lions." This fable teaches that what you have done to others will be done to you in equal measure. The Blacksmith and the Puppy. A blacksmith had a puppy. When the blacksmith worked, the puppy slept. But when the blacksmith ate, the puppy would stand beside him. The blacksmith tossed a bone to the puppy and said, "You lazy creature! What should I do with you, so full of idleness? When I strike my anvil, you lie down on your bed, not wanting to get up. But as soon as I move my teeth to eat, you wake up and wag your tail." This fable criticizes the lazy and sluggish who want to enjoy the fruits of others' labor without contributing. 416. The Bear, the Lion, and the Fox Go Hunting. The original source could not be found. For the English translation, refer to Aesop's Fables, a new translation by Laura Gibbs. Oxford University Press, World's Classics, Oxford 2002. The source of this story is from the Tetrastica, or four-line poems, composed by Ignatius the Deacon and his imitators in 9th century Byzantium. The story goes as follows. A bear, fox, and lion hunted together. The bear and lion caught prey the hard way. The fox found a tied-up camel instead of hunting. The Man and the Wolf. A man was travelling, dressed in a wolf's skin. A wolf came across him on the road. "See my clothes," said the man. "From them you can tell what I am and what I can do." The wolf first laughed loudly. Then, with a serious tone, he spoke to the man. "I know you are weak if you need another's skin to wear." 418. War broke out between the beasts and the birds. The ostrich, often regarded as half bird, half beast, was caught twice in one day during this conflict. Both sides saw it as an enemy. The birds claimed it was a beast, while the beasts insisted it was a bird. However, when the ostrich showed its feet to prove it wasn't a bird, and then displayed its wings and beak to prove it wasn't a beast, both parties concluded that although it appeared to be both, it was, in fact, neither. 419. The Thief and the Innkeeper. A thief rented a room at an inn, hoping to steal something to pay his bill. After waiting for days with no luck, he saw the innkeeper wearing a shiny new coat and sitting outside. The thief sat down next to him and struck up a conversation. As they talked, the thief suddenly yawned loudly and howled like a wolf. The innkeeper asked, "Why are you howling like that?" The thief replied, "I'll explain, but first, please hold my clothes so I don't rip them apart. I'm not sure when I developed this yawning habit or why I howl, but after my third yawn, I turn into a wolf and attack people." He yawned and howled again. The innkeeper, terrified, tried to run, but the thief grabbed his coat and begged, "Wait, sir. Hold my clothes or I'll tear them when I transform." After yawning a third time and howling even more fiercely, the innkeeper, completely panicked, left his coat behind and rushed inside for safety. The thief quickly made off with the coat and disappeared, never to return to the inn. In a village, two men secretly desired the same married woman. The first man came up with a clever signal. He would bark like a small dog at her door. For many nights the plan worked perfectly. The woman would hear the bark and meet her lover in secret. But the second man, observant and sharp, discovered the trick. One evening, the second man arrived early. He mimicked the first man's bark, and the woman, hearing it, opened the door and let him in. When the first man arrived and barked, the second man, already inside, barked even louder. The first man, frightened, thought a real dog had come and quickly ran away. In the end, the schemer was outwitted by his own plan. Translator's note: this story is included in the Byzantine manuscript lore, but since the original text could not be obtained, the translator has reconstructed it. 421. The Sailor and His Son. Once upon a time, there was a sailor who had spent most of his life working at sea. Wanting his son to have a better future, he sent him away to study rhetoric. After finishing his education, the son returned home, filled with pride. "Father," the son said confidently, "I've learned how to prove anything, even how to make false things seem true." The sailor, skeptical of his son's boast, decided to test his skills. He took out 2 eggs and placed them on the table. "All right," said the sailor, "if you're so clever, show me how these 2 eggs can feed 3 people." The son smiled and, with a flourish, picked up the eggs. He began counting. 1, 2, he said, then added triumphantly, "and 1 plus 2 equals 3, so I've created a 3rd egg through reasoning." The sailor chuckled but shook his head. "Very well," he said. "I'll eat 1 egg, your mother will eat the other, and you can have the 3rd egg you've created with your words." Translator's note: this story is included in the Byzantine manuscript lore, but since the original text could not be obtained, the translator has reconstructed it. 422. The Eagle Wants a Man. In old age, the eagle's upper beak grows longer and more crooked. Eventually, it becomes so deformed that the bird cannot feed itself and dies of starvation. There is a folklore story explaining this. It is said that the eagle was once a man. He refused to entertain a stranger who came to him, and as a result he was punished by being turned into an eagle. This is why the eagle suffers in old age. 423. Aesop and the Bitch. One evening, as Aesop was returning home from a dinner, a drunken bitch began barking at him. Aesop, annoyed, turned to her and said, "Bitch, if you had any sense, you would trade that wicked tongue of yours for some wheat instead." 424. Aesop to the Corinthians. Socrates also composed a fable in the style of Aesop, though not very skillfully, which began, "Judge not, ye men of Corinth." Aesop cried, "Of virtue as the jury courts decide." Note, this passage is found in Diogenes Laertius' Lives of Eminent Philosophers, Book Chapter 5, Section 42. The fable ends with these lines and does not continue further. The original source could not be found. For the English translation, refer to Aesop's Fables, a new translation by Laura Gibbs, Oxford University Press, World's Classics, Oxford, 2002. One winter, a fisherman spotted an octopus in the sea. He muttered to himself, "If I strip and dive in, I'll freeze to death. But if I don't catch it, my children will starve." 426. The Fox and the Stork. A fox once invited a stork to dinner. He served soup in a shallow bowl, which the fox could easily lap up. However, the stork, with its long beak, couldn't taste a drop. The hungry stork left, feeling embarrassed. A few days later, the stork invited the fox for a meal. The stork served food in a narrow-necked jug. The stork easily ate with its long beak, while encouraging the fox to eat. The fox, unable to reach the food, realized he had been tricked. The stork then said, "As you have given, so you receive. If you find it unacceptable, please forgive me." One should not mock others. Those who deceive with words truly suffer injustice themselves. The Hedgehog, the Fox, and the Ticks. Aesop recounted this fable while defending a demagogue on trial in Samos. A fox was swept into a gully while crossing a river and became trapped. Over time, ticks swarmed her body, causing great discomfort. A passing hedgehog, seeing the fox's plight, offered to remove the ticks. The fox declined, explaining, "These ticks are already full and barely suck my blood now. If you remove them, new hungry ticks will come and drain what little blood I have left." Aesop applied this story to the situation in Samos, arguing that the wealthy demagogue on trial would do less harm than new hungry politicians who might replace him if he were executed. This fable demonstrates how replacing one problematic situation with another can sometimes lead to worse outcomes. 428. The Chariot Driver. A man from Sybaris fell from his chariot and severely injured his head because he wasn't skilled in driving. His friend came up to him and said, "Everyone should stick to what they know best." 429. The Fox and the Man Counting the Waves. Why the need for tears, my good man? The story from the fable is quite wise, I think, which Aesop used to tell. He said that a certain man was sitting on the shore, counting the waves as they broke. When he lost count, he became frustrated and distressed. Then a fox came up to him and said, "Why, good sir, are you upset about the waves that have passed? You should start counting from here, ignoring those that have gone by." 430. Prometheus and the Tears. This is also something that Aesop said. The clay that Prometheus used when he created man was not mixed with water, but with tears. Therefore, one should not try to rid oneself entirely of tears, for they are inevitable. 431. The Language of Animals. Long ago, animals and humans lived in perfect harmony. They shared a common language. They roamed the earth together, understanding each other's words and thoughts. One day, the animals grew ambitious. They approached Zeus, the king of gods, with a greater request. "Great Zeus," they said, "we wish to be like the gods. Grant us divine powers so that we may be as mighty as you." But instead of granting their wish, Zeus spoke firmly. "You ask for too much. You seek to become greater than your place in the world. So, I will give you something else." With a single gesture, Zeus took away the animals' ability to speak. From that day onward, the animals could no longer converse with humans in the same language. They could only communicate through growls, roars, and cries, while humans alone retained the gift of speech. And so a divide was created, one that has remained ever since, for humans could no longer understand the animals as they once did. Translator's note: this story is attributed to Callimachus, but the complete original text does not exist. The story included is a narrative reconstructed by the translator. The Contest of Apollo and Marsyas. In a lush forest, a satyr named Marsyas stumbled upon a flute made of deer bone. Enchanted by its beautiful sound, he practiced tirelessly until his skill became unmatched. Overcome with pride, Marsyas boasted, "Even Apollo cannot play as well as I do." He challenged the god of music to a contest, and the 9 muses were chosen as judges. They decreed that the loser would be at the mercy of the winner. Marsyas played his flute, and Apollo played his lyre. Their music was so enchanting that the judges struggled to decide a winner. Then Apollo smiled slyly and said, "Let us play our instruments upside down." Marsyas, not realizing the trick, agreed. Apollo easily played his lyre in any position, but Marsyas found that a flute could not be played upside down. The muses declared Apollo the winner. As punishment, Apollo bound Marsyas to a tree and flayed him alive. From that day on, the whispers of the wind through the trees carried a warning: beware of challenging the gods, for their games are never fair. Aphrodite and the Merchant. Dexicreon was a shipmaster who sailed to Cyprus on a trading voyage. When he was about to load his ship, Aphrodite told him to fill it with water and nothing else, and to set sail as quickly as possible. He obeyed, filling the ship with water, and sailed away. After a while the wind died down, and the ship became becalmed in the open sea. To the other merchants and shipmasters who were thirsty, he sold the water and made a great fortune. Because of this, he created an image of the goddess and named it after himself. If this is indeed true, it seems that the goddess did not intend to make one man wealthy, but to save the lives of many through the actions of one. 434. The Eagle and the Sparrow. Therefore, people must hold on to these qualities and cultivate them within themselves to avoid becoming like the sparrow in Aesop's fable. The sparrow, while being carried on the eagle's shoulders, suddenly flew off and reached the finish line before the eagle. In doing so, it gained glory, but lost the goodwill and friendship of others. 435. The white sheep, the black sheep, the donkey and the goat. The white sheep, the black sheep, the goats, and the donkeys argued about which of them had the greatest religious superiority. The white sheep said, "My whiteness symbolizes innocence and holiness, so I am superior." The black sheep responded, "I may be black on the outside, but I am beautiful on the inside." The donkey added, "I am holier because I carry the cross on my back, imitating the crucified one." But the goat declared, "I am holier than all of you. I wear a hair shirt and drool on my long beard so that I don't appear handsome in the eyes of the world." These animals symbolize different religious practices, but beware of signs without true meaning. 436. The priest and the lion. One of the priests of the great Mother Rhea, called the Galley, sought refuge from the winter storm in an empty cave. As he brushed the snow from his hair, a lion, hungry and following his scent, entered the cave. There was no way to escape. The priest, however, held a large tambourine in his hand. He struck it with his palm, and the whole cave echoed with the loud sound. The lion, unable to bear the terrifying noise of Cybele's servant, fled up the mountain, scared by this delicate man. The priest then offered his robes and his golden hair to the goddess. Note, the great Mother Rhea is also known as Cybele. Rhea is the Roman name, while Cybele is the Greek name for the same goddess. The Galli were the priests of Cybele, known for their ecstatic worship and self-castration. They primarily used percussion instruments, especially tambourines, in their rituals. The owl, being a wise bird, advised the other birdswards when the first oak tree began to sprout. She said, "You must pull it up immediately. If you let it grow, it will turn into something dangerous. One day it will produce birdlime, a deadly substance that will trap us and bring about our destruction." Later, when people started planting flax, the owl warned the birds again. "You must remove those flax seeds," she urged. "If you don't, they will bring great harm to us." The third time, the owl saw a man carrying a bow. She cried out, "Look at that man! He may be walking on foot now, but mark my words, he will surpass us using our own feathers. He will create arrows with wings that will fly faster than we can." Despite the owl's warnings, the birds refused to listen. "She's crazy," they scoffed. "She's completely out of her mind." But in the end, the birds realized the owl had been right all along. Shocked, they began to respect her wisdom. From that point on, whenever they met the owl, they treated her with reverence as if she knew everything. But the owl no longer gave advice. She only sat in silence, mourning their past foolishness. 438. The Sybarite woman and the jug. Philocleon. Wait, don't leave so quickly. Listen to what I have to say. A woman in Sybaris broke a jug. Accuser to the witness. "Once again, I ask you to bear witness." Philocleon. The jug called for a witness to testify, but the woman said, "Never mind the testimony, just go and buy a cord to tie it up. That would be the wiser thing to do." Laurel and the olive. Long ago, a laurel tree and an olive tree had a heated argument about which of them was more important. "I am the most sacred tree," the laurel proudly boasted. "My leaves crown the heads of poets and heroes. The Pythian priestess sits on me, chants my name, and even her floor is made of my leaves." The olive calmly replied, "But what can you really do? You can't be eaten, drunk, or used for oil. I provide nourishment and light to people, benefiting everyone." As their argument grew fiercer, a nearby bramble tried to intervene. "Friends, why not end this quarrel?" the bramble said. "We all have our roles. Why must we tear each other down?" The olive coldly glared at the bramble and said, "Why are you interfering? What does a humble bramble like you have to do with our debate?" The laurel silently agreed, saying nothing in defense of the bramble. 440. The runaway slave in the mill. A man's slave had escaped. Some time later, the man spotted the runaway and chased after him. The slave, however, managed to get ahead and took shelter in a mill. Upon seeing this, the master exclaimed, "Where else could I have wanted to find you more than here?" Similarly, a woman who is filing for divorce out of jealousy and is in a state of anger should reflect and ask herself, "Where would my rival prefer to see me? What would she rather have me do than be upset with my husband, argue with him, and leave my home and bedroom?" The feast day and the day after. Once, a fellow general of Themistocles boasted about his great service to the city. He boldly compared his deeds to those of Themistocles. In response, Themistocles said, "The day after once challenged the festival day, saying, 'You are busy and tiring, but when I arrive, everyone relaxes and enjoys what was prepared earlier.' The festival day answered, 'True, but if I hadn't come first, you wouldn't exist at all.' So now," Themistocles continued, "if I hadn't been there on that day at Salamis, where would you and your colleagues be today?" In ancient times, people were hard to tell apart, the good and bad alike, as old stories impart. Many worthy souls seemed quite ordinary, while fools were praised, considered exemplary. Honour was given to those who least deserved, and the best were shamed, with justice reversed. But God above, seeing this unfair state, spoke in anger, no longer willing to wait. "It's wrong for good and evil to share the same fame, for wickedness would grow and rise to claim. I'll give a sign to mark the truly good, so all can see who's virtuous as they should." With that he made the good blush a bright red, blood rushing beneath their skin, spreading instead. To women, delicate in form and tender in heart, he gave this sign in greater part, but for the wicked he left them unchanged. Unmoved by shame, in sin they remained. The Monkey and the Pea. Once upon a time, the king of Benares was on a hunting trip with his wise counselor. They stopped to rest and feed their horses some peas. Suddenly, a young monkey darted down from a tree and scooped up a large handful of peas from the feeding trough. As the monkey climbed back up the tree, one pea slipped from his grasp and fell to the ground. In a desperate attempt to catch the fallen pea, the monkey dropped all the peas he was holding. The scattered peas were quickly eaten by the horses below. The monkey climbed back up the tree empty-handed and sat sadly on a branch, watching as all his peas were gone. The king and his counselor observed this with amusement. The counselor chuckled and said, "Great king, when you become too greedy, remember the monkey and the pea." This tale serves as a reminder of the dangers of excessive greed, showing how one can lose everything while chasing after something trivial. Translator, this story is a fable from India. 444. The origin of Eros. In the beginning, chaos emerged. Then came Earth with her broad bosom, forming the eternal base for all the immortal gods who dwell on Olympus's snowy peaks. Deep within the vast earth arose gloomy Tartarus. Next appeared Eros, the most beautiful of the undying gods. Eros weakens the limbs and clouds the minds of both gods and humans, overcoming their wisest thoughts. 445. Pleasure and pain. Socrates sat up on his bed, bent his leg, and rubbed it with his hand. As he did so, he said, "My friends, isn't it strange, this thing we call pleasure? It has a curious relationship with its seeming opposite, pain. They don't occur together, yet when you chase and catch one, you often have to take the other too. It's as if they're joined at the head." He continued, "I think if Aesop had considered this, he might have created a fable. In it, pleasure and pain would be at war. A god would try to make peace between them. Unable to do so, the god would join them at the head instead. That's why when you encounter one, the other soon follows." Socrates then added, "This seems to be happening to me right now. The chains caused pain in my leg, and now pleasure appears to be following." 446. The Birds and the Cuckoo. Aesop says that when the cuckoo asked the little birds why they ran away from him, they replied that it was because he would someday turn into a hawk. Note, in the context of Plutarch's Life of Aratus, this fable is used to explain why Lydiades, despite his actual good qualities, was always viewed with suspicion. Lydiades had once been a tyrant, and just like the cuckoo in Aesop's fable, even though he was not a threat at the moment, people feared he might turn into something dangerous again. His past actions created doubt in the minds of others, making them wary of him, just as the little birds feared the cuckoo would eventually become a hawk. 447. Aesop says that the crested lark was the first bird created, even before Gaia, the earth. Because of this, when the lark's father became ill and died, there was no earth to bury him in. On the 5th day that his body had been lying there, the frustrated lark, not knowing what else to do, buried her father on her own head. 448. Orpheus and the Dogs. The Phrygian also spoke about the harpists of your city. He said that, although the other animals simply felt pleasure and amazement from Orpheus' music, they never tried to imitate it. But some of the dogs, known for their shameless and curious nature, devoted themselves to music. They started practicing immediately, separating themselves to do so. Once they were transformed into human form, they kept their commitment to the art. He claimed that this breed of dogs is the source of the harpists. As a result, they have never been able to fully shake off their natural instincts. While they hold on to a small part of Orpheus's teachings, most of their music has remained true to its canine roots. 449. The Dog's House. In the winter, the dog curled up in as small a space as possible to protect himself from the cold. He decided to build a house for himself. But when summer arrived, he stretched out and slept comfortably, feeling quite large. At that moment, he thought that building a house to fit his size would neither be easy nor necessary. 450. The Lions and the Hares. Only a fool would try to create laws that govern the most exceptional members of society. These superior individuals would likely respond as the lions did in Antisthenes' tale when the hares addressed the assembly, advocating for universal equality. The hares passionately spoke to the gathering, arguing that all should be considered equal. The lions replied simply, "Your words are good, O hares, but they lack the claws and teeth that we possess." 451. The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. A wolf once found it difficult to reach the sheep because of the vigilance of the shepherd and his dogs. One day, however, the wolf found the skin of a sheep that had been flayed and discarded. The wolf put it on over its own fur and walked among the sheep. The lamb whose skin the wolf was wearing began to follow the wolf, thinking it was one of the sheep. The wolf led the lamb aside and quickly made a meal of it. For some time, the wolf successfully deceived the other sheep and enjoyed hearty meals. Looks can be deceiving.